hello, friends. We are here with our Heart of Worship team, some of our original team members, to just talk a little bit about the origin story of Heart of Worship, to tell a little bit of our history, and also share with you what this Heart of Worship ministry is all about. Heart of Worship actually started a long time ago, 2001, in Stockton, California, and it started as a worship conference sponsored and hosted at one of our Bible colleges. And I remember those early days. I had always told the Lord I would never do a worship conference, that I didn't want to have anything to do with hosting, facilitating a music conference, because I just thought that was horribly overwhelming and something I never wanted to take on. And you know how God always works. When you tell God you're never going to do something.
Never.
Humor.
Yeah, God has a sense of humor. You're right, Betsy. And it made me realize that, wow, God certainly had different plans than I had in my own mind. So Heart of Worship started in Stockton, California, with a music conference hosted in 2001. And I remember those early days. We started very humbly and very simply. And I remember that some of you all began to join the journey in those early years of Heart of Worship. Kevin Howard, one of our steering team members, why don't you talk a little bit about how you became connected to Heart of Worship?
Well, I think you invited me to be a clinician, basically. And we had already become friends, ministry friends, and so we thought this would be a great place to do the ministry together, some ministry together. So we had worked prior to Heart of Worship at a music conference, and so we knew that there was a little bit of a ministry chemistry that worked, and so I joined. I think from the very first year, and then it wasn't long after that Nancy came along, and I connected you and Laura's for, introduced the two of you, and then Betsy was a student at the time, and she was all in, taking all the piles of work that needed to happen, pulling all-nighters, and yeah. And so yeah, even though they were humble beginnings, obviously here we are still, right? And so I think it was really significant, the connection that happened right from the beginning, the vision that we caught for what God wanted to do through the ministry. Even though we didn't see it fully, we felt it. We felt it a lot. And so we started making those kind of baby steps almost toward what we felt like God was really opening, the doors he was opening through that conference. And so those early years are treasured years.
They are.
Sure.
They were formative years. I remember, Betsy, you were there. I remember in one of our prayer meetings in those very first few years, we were in a small classroom at the college, and there was just a handful of us, and we were praying for the conference, praying over Heart of Worship. And I remember that God gave me like a vision, which sounds kind of pretentious. I don't mean to be pretentious, because it was such a profound spiritual moment, but I don't know how else to describe it except it felt like a vision. And I remember that the Lord showed me this wall, and there was this large wall, and there were just a few of us. We started small, and there were a few of us behind this wall, and we were sort of like coming at the wall, trying to take the wall down, sort of brick by brick, piece by piece, trying to break through a wall. And I remember that when we could see through the wall and we saw what was on the other side, what was on the other side was this giant crowd, army of worshipers, but they were standing there and they were waiting. They were meant to be worshipers, but there was nothing really going on. They were waiting. And we began to just almost by our hands tear down this wall. And as we began to see the wall fall, the worshipers were released. And I remember the emotion of that moment. I remember feeling that they were flooding over us, almost like we had sort of lost ourselves in the crumbling of the wall. It wasn't really about us, but we were releasing the worshipers. I remember that phrase in my mind. We were releasing the worshipers, and it felt so clear, even in those early days of the 2000s, that the purpose of this ministry was to somehow release worshipers, to release those that were maybe stuck, those that weren't moving forward, those that were not activated, that the whole purpose of Heart of Worship Ministries was to release the worshipers. And I think that moment, those early moments of prayer and seeking the face of God, really became a defining trait of this ministry. And I don't think we've ever strayed from that sense that what we do is release the worshiper to be the best version of themselves, to be empowered in ministry, to move forward successfully.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about, Kevin, what happened in '06 with Heart of Worship Ministries?
You had a transition in your life of ministry, and you came out of the education system into full-time church ministry. Moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And I remember that that was about year 5, and we felt like there was a sense of momentum around the conference, and that it didn't need to remain just a Bible school sponsored conference, but that it had become its own Heart of Worship entity. And so we felt that even with you moving, that we should keep the vision of it together and basically take it on the road. And so for 3 years, I think it was 6, 7, and 8, we took it to Louisiana, we took it to Virginia, and then we ended up taking it to Eastern Canada.
Yeah.
And for those next 3 years, and really started exploring bringing it into new environments, and really gaining a broader family, Heart of Worship family, really expanding our family influence. And so that only underscored what we had felt in the early years, that yes, this was something that the voice was bigger than just one locale, one small little event. But that it was more of a movement almost. And so moving it around like that really started showing us that. So
I love what you say, that we started to meet our family. Because you look back to 2006, 2007, 2008, so many people that are still part of this ministry team today sort of joined the family in those years. They became connected with Heart of Worship. They became aware of Heart of Worship. And that's when we really started to see a family that extended beyond just the West Coast and our West Coast family. And we started to really build connections and relationships that, have just lasted until this day. Well, Nancy, talk a little bit about what happened next.
One of the things I've loved about Heart of Worship is that the steering team and the staff that we work with have been so committed to community within ourselves and within the ministry and the vision of the Heart of Worship Ministry. And so we felt like we had great excitement and momentum coming out of the 2008 conference. And we went in, we always are an invited entity. We don't necessarily invite ourselves to go to places, but we are invited by host churches. And so as we looked and we started planning for the next time, we had a couple of opportunities. But since we're founded on trying to be spiritually sensitive, neither one of them felt like the right thing to do. So we very sort of sadly really decided we're just going to hit the pause button. We're not going to try to break through something we don't feel like the Lord has directed us in either direction. I one time heard a minister say, if you trust the Lord to direct your steps, you also have to trust Him to direct your stops. That in some ways it almost felt like we'd had the emergency brake thrown on after about a year.
It was tough.
We kept communicating and talking and praying about next steps, but it just didn't seem like doors were opening for the next steps. And we really had to, I think, walk in trust during that time. And it never felt like the ministry had gone away or had died, but it just felt like we were definitely on a long pause. But as time went on, it became very clear to us that the Lord had been working in our benefit through that time.
Right.
And when the doors opened again, and it felt like suddenly, although really when God's working, nothing really happens suddenly.
Right.
When things kind of exploded open, all of the momentum, it seems like, in the synergy and energy that we had and the passion for this ministry and the family that we're kind of acquiring through the people we're meeting just went right back into where it started.
Right.
Yeah. I remember, Kevin, I remember just very clearly a phone conversation that we had during that time. And we were all on the phone together, and you made the comment, you said, well, we may not be doing Heart of Worship right now, but let's really keep in touch with one another. Let's keep the relationships alive. And I think that was so important for what God was going to do next, because we never allowed the relational dynamic to go away. We were still connected in our hearts as ministry partners, even though there was seemingly no activity happening on the surface.
Right.
The true strength of who we were was living and existing.
Yes. Well, I think we were all still walking in that, even individuals, but we were still doing it in the context of our connections too.
Yeah.
With this vision that we knew there was something to, and even though there was nothing happening at that moment, it still was alive in all of us.
Right.
And so we didn't let that die. We kept it stirred up with all of us, because I feel like we all needed that. We needed an outlet within ourselves of what we did locally. Not because what we did locally wasn't enough. We just knew that there was a heartbeat for something that was broad kingdom,
Yes.
and we knew that somehow it had to be expressed.
Yeah.
And it just, the timing was everything, and just the seasons. We had to trust all of those seasons, but that connection was really what kept that alive in all of us.
Yeah.
Because we never stopped talking about it. Never.
No, we never
the,
did.
Kind of the dark years, the dark when we
Yes, and I've always appreciated that we trusted the Lord and did not try to force what our hearts wanted to happen before God's timing came through, because He always does everything so well. So when it did come back to a place of I wouldn't call it a restart, but kind of coming back into action, that it was an amazing time, and really, really good things happened in that next conference that we couldn't have made happen.
No. Exactly.
So in 2014, we relaunched, reactivated Heart of Worship in Richmond, Virginia. The next few years, we were in Nashville, in Dallas, Kansas City, Terre Haute, Indiana, Palm Bay, Florida, and most recently, Modesto, California. We've even done a Heart of Worship retreat in the southern part of Missouri, a small city named Piedmont. And God has really been faithful. Yes. We've met so many incredible people on that journey through the years since the relaunch in 2014. And some other really cool things have also happened. God's been working through us and in us in ways that extend far beyond just hosting a conference. Talk a little bit, Kevin, about some of the musical things we've been doing.
So we actually do have a couple of different recordings out. One that came out 3 or 4 years ago, that was kind of a compilation of a few songs we felt really strongly about. 3 of them I think we wrote ourselves, and they just felt like they expressed who we were. And then we covered one song there. We did an EP. And then even most recently, a year ago, just over a year ago, we partnered with Infinite Church, Mark Condon's ministry, and he had a heartbeat for something to have, a collab project. We hosted him a couple of years ago at Heart of Worship, and he just saw the vision immediately of this collab project. And so we got together a year ago and wrote 12 songs in 5 days, and ended up recording in the same 5 days 9 of those 12 songs that were profoundly Heart of Worship, I feel like. And so that's been our most recent expression, and we even, I feel like, have a heartbeat for probably maybe a round 2 of that collaboration effort. So kind of stay tuned for what God has for that too. It's pretty exciting.
Nancy, talk a little bit about some of our other things that we've done over the past few years, and maybe a little bit about what's coming next.
Well, I am excited because we have another book coming out, which means we've already done a previous version.
right.
So we published a devotional book, and we had collaborated with several of our Heart of Worship family members to write a devotional book, and I personally think it's really good and worth having, and it's available on Amazon for those that want to purchase it. And then we are soon to publish our next book. It's not a devotional per se, although if someone wanted to, they could probably use it as such. But we're really excited. We always have a lot to say when we get together. And when we are at conferences, we have a lot to say to each other. And we talk about really the heartbeat of what's behind the ministry that we're all involved in. So I'm super excited that the philosophies and the understandings and the things that are near and dear to us are being expressed in writing.
Absolutely. Betsy, talk a little bit about how some of this ties into the heart we have for multicultural ministries. Talk a little bit about what we offer.
One of the first things that you mentioned, it is how this ministry really was birthed in prayer. So I believe that's the heart of God, just expressing his heart through our ministry. And I'm grateful that we followed that leading. And it's always been surrounded by prayer. And we've seen that God keeps adding to our family and of different people. Different, I mean, I'm different than you guys are. It's been, and it's been a joy to me that we've offered, from time to time classes in Spanish or multicultural for others that speak a different language. I do remember that, just offering classes here and there. But lately, we've seen how God just keeps moving in a way that he wants us to reach every person. And I believe that is just a picture of heaven. How it is from every race, every tongue, every color, every shape and form, and that's how heaven is going to be. So what is exciting is to see that being reflected through the ministry, through what our resources that we are putting out there. And something very exciting is not just a class coming up for a conference or the retreat, but it is a book also that we are producing in Spanish that should be coming up this year. So that's very exciting. There's hardly any resources in Spanish. As a Spanish speaker, I can tell you that, especially apostolic material for worshipers or for music ministers. So our heartbeat is to reach anyone, any worship leader, pastor that wants to reach the heart of God through worship. And I believe that's what we are attempting to do. So that's exciting to see coming into our ministry.
Love it.
Incredible, incredible. Well, we just want to close this short video by talking a little bit about what we see as the purpose of Heart of Worship Ministries. If you wonder, what are they all about? What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish in their ministry group? Here's just a few points on what we want to accomplish, what we see our kingdom purpose as being. Our first purpose is to just provide a space for creatives to explore and express their God-given calling.
I think that one of the things that we do well is help people connect with each other. And I know spending many years as a music director, I always wanted to find a way to connect with my tribe. Yeah. And there wasn't a lot of outlets for that, or at different music conferences that I would go to would provide wonderful resources, but not a lot of points of connection. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that we do very well is that we really provide a place where people can be transparent and be themselves and come into the community that they maybe didn't even know existed before they came to a Heart of Worship event.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Nancy. And I think that really ties into the second purpose, which is to cultivate a kingdom community, a kingdom-minded community where worshipers share their journey. So that sense of connection, that sense of shared, we are walking a shared journey here. I'm not alone. I'm not out on a limb somewhere without a friend, without a colleague that understands my journey. I think that's a big part.
I think to that point, it's like let the nerds arise, like let us call. It's like we all feel that. I think a lot of creatives feel kind of like an outlier in a normal situation, and so all of a sudden there's this place where we can all come together and
you just fit.
We're just
no
there.
What.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it normalizes all of a sudden.
Yes. ahead.
But only to
your
speak to
perspective.
that, if you are in your journey, let's say in a hard place, you're not the only one.
You're not the
All
only
of
one.
a sudden, you're sharing with somebody and sharing your burdens
Exactly.
with one another. And again, one thing is very inclusive. You just feel like it doesn't matter if you are in a huge church or in a little church. You just share the same struggles, maybe,
Right.
and the same desires,
Apprehensions, yes,
all
yes.
of that, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's okay that I'm feeling this way. And now I'm leaning into someone that can help me. And I can leave this place with family that I can contact, that I can get support instead of trying to get or stay isolated.
Yeah, so good, so good. Our third purpose is to nurture creative confidence and leadership skill. I think we really want to see and call out the leadership potential in every person that comes. Every person that walks through the door of a Heart of Worship conference, they may not be the lead pastor or even the music minister, but they have a leader inside of them. And we're there to call that out and pull out where is it that God wants you to thrive and flourish?
Yeah.
To call out the leader. Our fourth purpose is to promote artistic excellence and spirit-led worship. Talk a little bit about that, Kevin. What do we mean by that?
Well, I don't think that it has to be anointed and pitiful. I think it can be anointed and amazing.
Praise God.
We are creatives.
Yes.
God gives his creative nature. He allows us so much liberty to express through our gifting that he gives us. We give it back to him, and he's like, you make it beautiful, you make it amazing, you make it powerful, you do that. He allows us to be the steward of that. And so the environment we try to create is to empower people with that like we said, you use the word confidence, that, oh, okay, I had a kid recently talk to me. He's like, Brother Howard, I love punk rock. What do I do with that? Like, what do I do with that? And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, I guess. Like, let's talk about it. We had this conversation about when you feel to express something that's like maybe not a mainstream artistic expression, like in the church. What can we do with it?
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of a place in our environment to explore those kind of things,
Absolutely.
conversations, and inspiring people to really pursue what they feel is inside of them.
Right.
That it is a legitimate God call, and there is a way to give a legitimate expression to it, and that it contributes something incredible to the kingdom.
Space for that.
Right.
Yes,
It's no judgment. Like,
Right.
we're creatives here. So yes, if that's your thing, let's figure it out.
Yeah,
Let's figure
yeah.
out how to do it.
Yeah, so we kind of find a way to pull back the curtain and get behind to the place where we really find a way for everybody to partner with God in making his praise glorious, and however that looks like.
That's the goal. Exactly.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we are incredibly spirit-led.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are a ministry that I think nurtures in every moment we spend together. We might laugh a lot, we might talk a lot, we might share each other's burdens, but at the end of the day, the Lord is in the middle of everything we're doing.
Actively pursuing his presence. That's
Yes.
what we desire.
Absolutely. And I think we're an incredibly spirit-led ministry. God has been leading us every step of the way since those early years in 2001, leading us to do things that are meaningful and beautiful for his kingdom. And really, in closing, our hope is that we are more than just a yearly conference, more than just an event or event planners.
Right.
We're not here just to be event planners, but that we would provide resources, whether that's through the books, whether that's through videos like this one, where we share information and share content,
Right.
whether it be through the music that we're writing and the songwriting we're doing, speaking into the apostolic worship, a body of music and offerings. God, I feel, has really called us to be a resource to men and women in large churches and small churches, men and women who feel like they're operating with everything they need and feel like they're operating with nothing they need. Whatever it is, we want to be a ministry that serves the worshiper.
Exactly.
So keep praying with us, keep
Yes.
partnering with us. If you've never been to a Heart of Worship event, we invite
Yes.
you. You all have an open invitation, and just continue to pray over the future and the operation of this ministry. May God bless all of you.
Awesome.